Good evening, Pure Potential members. It is Saturday night, September 6th, on the eve of the first NFL Sunday slate. I was going to say the first NFL action, but that's not true. We've got two games down already. Thursday Night Football, Friday Night Football. We'll talk about those. Nico already here to drop the important news of the evening, which is a recent report posted by several accounts, including Underdog NFL Twitter account, that the Jaguars plan for Travis Hunter to be an every down wide receiver and a situational cornerback in week one. This is frankly what I've been talking about since he was drafted, that this always made the most sense, that he was going to be used as a wide receiver as much as possible, because wide receivers get paid a lot more than cornerbacks. Trading up to two only makes sense if he can be an elite wide receiver. The Jaguars have nothing at wide receiver after Brian Thomas without Travis Hunter. It just made all the sense in the world. And then he was training more at wide receiver than corner. So, I mean, ultimately, I think this is pretty much what we should have expected, but this is full-time wide receiver. That's the type of language you want to hear for sure. I think you can certainly start Travis Hunter in week one as a flex option and feel fine about that. I'll probably be playing him in one or two leagues where I have him. But yeah, that's exciting news. We are going to start out by talking about these first two games that we've seen and kind of how I'm reacting to them. You guys can please feel free to drop some questions about week one, anything that is pressing in the chat, and we can get to that stuff. And then I also mentioned that I could give out some like predictions or awards or whatever if you guys gave me some categories. Nobody gave me any categories, so we can always skip that part. I didn't have time to prep that ahead of time, but if you want me to throw out some takes on like who's going to be the best rookie this year or whatever, like, I'm happy to do that, because I know that those types of predictions can be fun. I'm fine with improvising on that. But important stuff. Oh, and before I do Thursday night, Friday night, there are a couple questions in the member stream channel. One of them was about the Judkins contract. If you didn't catch it, Quinshon Judkins finally did sign his contract. He did actually get the fully guaranteed contract like the other second rounders did, if I was reading that correctly. It still seems like there's a chance he could get suspended, but I don't really know. I know Jacob Sanderson tweeted he thinks it's less than 50% that happens. I've seen other people saying he's going to get 6 games. He's not going to play in week one, obviously. He's not going to play in the game tomorrow. But if he doesn't get suspended, then he'll, I guess, play in week two. Whether he will be up to speed enough to be ahead of Dylan Sampson, I kind of doubt. I think we're going to get at least 2 to 3 weeks of Dylan Sampson as the lead guy, and then potentially more depending on how he performs. But if no suspension comes for Judkins, it becomes harder for Sampson to distance himself from Judkins before he can come in and kind of get a foothold. So certainly with this signing happening, if there is no suspension, I think that we could see Judkins bounce back a little bit to his value before all of this happened, and the Domain boys could come out ahead on that one. We shall see. As always throughout this process, I've just reacted to the information that was available to me. Really hard to know how these cases are going to go. There's really not a lot of actionable stuff with the Judkins thing. Like, anybody that's still held him through all of this isn't selling him now that he's signed. And if you have him, I guess you could try to sell him now off of the contract being signed if you want to. But unless you're getting at least a first round pick, I don't think there's really any point in doing that. Anyway, let me just circle back here to the chat. We've got the Berserk Gamer here with the W in the chat. Biff867 is here. Austin is here, and he's late, apparently. Yella is here. I was on time today, guys. Thank you for noticing that. I was actually a couple minutes early. Austin, I know you're not asking me directly, but I do want to know what the parlay is. I'm just curious and how dumb it is. I see some of these questions for predictions. We can come back to those. And Austin asks how my day's been. My day's been pretty all right. I played a lot of Hollow Knight Silksong, which is consuming my every thought. If you take any advice from me in ever, I mean, I guess you guys take a lot of advice from me. If you ever take any non-fantasy football advice from me, it's to play Hollow Knight and to play Hollow Knight Silksong. Those two games are life-changing pieces of art. Just absolute masterpieces. So I've been doing that. I was doing a lot of work for my other job, prepping for school. I spent the whole summer making YouTube videos and not doing lesson plans, and that is certainly catching up to me. So I am feeling pretty exhausted right now. Happy to be able to take a break from that and just talk ball for a little while. Important question from the Berserk Gamer. Can I play Silksong first? So far, there hasn't been much crossover, except the playable character in Silksong is also in Hollow Knight. But no, I don't think there's really anything that... I don't really think there's any reason you'd have to play one before the other. You can play either one. Max asks, how's the first week of school? Pretty good. I won't bore anybody with all the details, but it's been good. I have I teach 3 different groups of kids. Each one is about 20 students. And for the most part, nice kids. I've enjoyed getting to know them. I mean, I knew most of them last year. It's a small school, and I teach a wide range of ages, but I've enjoyed seeing them, talking to them. Good start to the year, I'd say. All right. Let's oh, okay, we got some other teachers here in the chat. Blacked Mind says he has a student that loves football. Real game changer. Love to hear that. I have a little bit of football talk. Look, I have some students that are Eagles fans, and we'll talk about the games. Nobody's like a sicko, you know, actually follows it super closely and knows all the players and everything like that. But that's okay. I don't mind getting a break from that when I'm at school. Also, it's bothering me that this lamp is in the frame. I normally move the lamp. I forgot. Okay. And Berserk Gamer says I start teaching Monday, slightly nervous. Hey man, you got this. You know more than the kids. Just get in there and talk about the stuff that you know and the stuff that you have been practicing. And I get in my head about it a lot too, but it's really, once you've put in the work to learn how to do it and everything, like everything's going to be okay. It always feels like everything's more important than it actually is. And then you get in the classroom and it's like, oh, this is fine. I could probably just show up and like completely improvise and everything would be fine. All right. We're going to go back to Thursday night football. First game of the season, Eagles versus Cowboys. Few takes from that game. First of all, on the Eagles side, AJ Brown gave us the one catch for 8 yards. That's pretty killer. He was a guy that almost certainly was in your starting lineup if you had him. I'm worried about this. I think it's pretty obvious he wasn't healthy in this game. Like everybody that watched the film and charted the film says like he wasn't getting open. He wasn't really running routes full speed. I tried to focus on him and it seemed like Hurts wasn't even looking at him most of the time. So I just think he's not healthy. The question is whether he can get healthy in 10 days before the Eagles go to Arrowhead and play the Chiefs. It's going to be hard to be confident in playing him, but you got to monitor the practice reports, I guess, this week and see how limited he is. I'm certainly leaning more buy or hold in Dynasty than I would be leaning towards sell. This is just like not going to be a good time to sell him, even if it turns out that we need to lower expectations for him, which I think is premature. It's never going to be the time like off of a bad game like this. So I lean more buy or hold than sell with AJ Brown. Other skill players like Barkley kind of did whatever, what Barkley's going to do. Nothing really unexpected there. It was nice to see him catching some passes. I don't think there's necessarily like a change in the system there. I think it's just if AJ Brown's not going to be part of the play, there's only so many guys you can throw to. Jalen Hurts was looking pretty spry in the running game. That was nice to see. Looking agile. As always, he can get his fantasy points without really taking anybody else on the team with him. His mobility is going to get you there to probably top 5 scoring again this year. Devonta Smith, kind of a nothing game, whatever. It is what it is. Dallas Goedert led the team in receptions. I've really liked him as a pickup in tight end premium leagues. I'd mentioned him as one of my highest exposure players. I started him in several leagues this week. I think he's a little bit underrated, just because the team was so run heavy last year and because he missed like 6 or 7 games. But I think he's a very startable tight end pretty much every week in tight end premium. And then Will Shipley apparently had a rib injury. I don't know how serious it is. Hopefully not that serious, because he was actually looking really good as the running back 2 before his injury. He was getting mixed into the regular rotation. He was taking, a series here and there. He had a screen pass that was nice. So I was really excited about Shipley. If he is going to miss a week or two, I would definitely buy low on him, because A.J. Dillon is terrible, and that is a really, really valuable handcuff role. So that's the Eagles side for me. Austin, I don't think I'm ignoring you, but if I am, I apologize. I just can't keep up with all the chat stuff. Helix is here. What's up, dude? Welcome into the stream. How about those Eagles? 1-0. John says, interesting that Smith didn't go off if A.J. Brown was injured. Do you think Dallas DBs factored in? I mean, honestly, I can't get deep enough into the personnel to say for sure if it was Devonta Smith, or if it was about the defensive backs, it was just a schematic matchup they were looking at. Week 1 is always weird in one way or another. It felt like Dallas was trying to keep everything short. We only had one long pass really completed in the whole game. And I don't know. It just feels like the Dallas had a game plan, or the Eagles had a game plan to get certain players involved, and that was how it went. I'm not really changing how I feel about Devonta Smith. He was always going to have games like this. It's why I don't have him ranked terribly high. But yeah, it was a disappointing game for both the wide receivers. Austin, none of my students could name every Heisman since 2000. I don't think any of them could do every Heisman in the last 5 years. I don't think that would be likely. They could maybe name a couple players that have won it. But again, not really any diehards. Most of the students I teach that are into football are like 7th or 8th graders, and they don't really have any like historical knowledge at all. No offense to them. Max asked, if Worthy is out for the year, are we paying a late first? I'm not sending a first at all. I wouldn't be sending away a first on a rebuilding team pretty much at all. I would send like late 1 value for him if you can. If you have other pieces you could send. If you could send like a second and a bench player. Hopefully he's not out for the year. Like, I don't have any information on that. It's just about whether it's going to need surgery or not. And it seemed like it was a pretty serious dislocation. So it's on the table, but I really don't have any idea how long it's going to be. And I do agree with Biff here. We'll go over to the Cowboys side. Dak did look great. He played a great game. Like, his stat line is really deceiving. He had some dropped passes. There were some deep balls that ended up being defensive penalties that otherwise would have been caught. Javonte got the 2 touchdowns. Obviously, Dak looked great. I'm not really worried about this passing game at all. Ultimately, the Eagles are a good defense, even though we let up some plays and had some bad moments in that game. I'm still in on Dak. I'm still in on Pickens. Obviously, CD had a pretty good game overall. Could have been better, but still had a really good game with over 100 yards. So nothing for me to change in the Dallas passing game. I'm not really changing any expectations. George Pickens, for what it's worth, he ran all of the routes. He actually ran more routes than Lamb. I will say there are some concerning clips out there about him not giving effort off the ball, which has been an issue with him. I thought maybe he would have been coached up a little bit more, maybe in a contract year on a new team, he would be acting differently. Still not really giving effort when he's not the main target as far as running his routes, as far as blocking is concerned. Who knows if that can be a problem long term? Like Nate has been on this about Pickens. He could have had a much bigger game though, if not for the defensive pass interference. There was like a 40-yard pass that got that he didn't catch because of DPI. So just for what it's worth, like he was out there, he was getting open. I'm not really that worried about Pickens. The Pokemon guy points out the Eagles picked up Estime. How do you feel about that? I don't think Audric Estime is any good. He could beat out AJ Dillon because AJ Dillon's also not good, but he wasn't active for this game. If Will Shipley misses time, I don't know. Maybe he's the next man up. I'm not sure what other running backs we have on the practice squad, but he's only worth rostering in like super duper deep leagues unless you have like a big points per carry premium or something. The parlay is Hunter over 48.5 and Gibbs to score. Yeah, I mean that seems fine. I mean it, like all parlays like that are like fundamentally stupid as far as like they're not the best way to, like they're not the best expected value, you know, like everybody that knows how to do sports betting is just like, yeah, just do straight bets all the time. And like parlays are obviously more fun. But as far as parlays go, it seems fine. So the running backs are the real storyline for the Cowboys. Javonte Williams' workload was like Kyron-esque. He had like 80-something% of the running back opportunities. We always knew Javonte was going to be the starter to open the year. Now, a couple things caught me off guard. I didn't think Jaden Blue was going to be a healthy scratch. That surprised me just because Jaden Blue had such a clear skill set coming out that he was always a good pass catcher and he was always a good pass blocker. I just kind of thought he would have a small role from the start. The fact that he wasn't active was really surprising, especially because he played well in the preseason, like in a small sample. Maybe he just wasn't back healthy enough from the low ankle sprain, or like the time he missed from the low ankle sprain was enough for him to not like know the playbook or know the game plan for week one. If someone's giving away Jaden Blue for like a 4th round pick or like less than they would last week, I don't really care about this. So to answer the question in the chat here, yeah, I guess he's kind of a buy. I wouldn't send more than a 3rd for him. The thing about Javonte, he had a couple plays that impressed me, but overall, like when you dig into his game as a whole, he wasn't very good outside of 1 or 2 decent plays that he made. Like he still was inefficient overall in terms of yards per carry. He still wasn't making people miss. I think that the idea that he's like back, that he is suddenly regained something that he had lost because of the injury, I think that's probably overstated. But the workload is huge. I didn't think he was capable of commanding that kind of a workload. If he's going to get that kind of workload all year, it's just undeniable that he is, you know, a startable running back and is worth at least a late second. Now, what I've been going back and forth in as I think about the potential, you know, the rankings update coming on Monday, should he be in the late second tier based on that workload, or are we factoring in some level of risk that workload is just not going to hold up, that it's going to depreciate because he's not good enough to deserve it? I don't think Kyron Williams is good enough to deserve the workload that he has, and yet he still has it. So it's a tricky question. Like, I guess, why should Javonte Williams right now at this moment be valued below DeAndre Swift, when DeAndre Swift, also not a good running back, also has some backfield competition in Kyle Monangai, not that different from like a Jaden Blue, except that Monangai's actually gotten more positive coach speak. The Cowboys offense could easily be just as good, if not more fantasy friendly to running backs than the Bears. We don't know for sure. You know, I'm not saying I'm going to put him ahead of DeAndre Swift, but these are the things I'm talking through. Like, why should he be a tier or 2 tiers lower than a running back like that? You know, how much risk are we factoring into him losing this role? I tend to think that he wasn't actually that good in the game. when you take away the fact that he scored twice, one of which was because of a defensive pass interference in the end zone, his fantasy day wasn't that great. He honestly wasn't that involved in the passing game, which surprised me considering that was kind of his calling card on the Broncos. So it's tricky, and it's something where I'm trying not to let my priors get in the way too much and just look at the situation objectively. Player on a new team, this is the role they chose to give him. There's got to be some credence to that or some value to that. I think ultimately he will land in the late 2 tier, but towards the bottom of it. But I still need to think about it a little bit more. Miles Sanders honestly had the chance to carve out a little more of that work, but he fumbled in the red zone. I think the team's really going to not going to like that. I think at this point, Miles Sanders is probably more likely to lose his job to Phil Maffa when he's off the IR than he is to overtake Javonte or force a split with Javonte. So, yeah, I don't know. He's probably safe for a little while. His week-to-week value is probably going to depend on the matchup. How bad is the defense, and how likely are they to score touchdowns? I still think you could just sell Javonte for a future second. That's how I would prefer to handle this. Like, if you can get a random 26 second for him, 27 second for him, I'd still like to do that, because again, I don't think he has high upside. So unless you really, really, really need him right now, you're going to start him next week, I think I would just rather trade him, to be honest with you. Not something I have to think about. I don't think that I have any shares, but I can check. The Pokemon guy asked, how are we feeling about Hampton's debut? I think it was okay. Just some rookie mistakes. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't super impressive or anything when I was watching the game, but you have to love the workload, which I think is way, way, way more important. I didn't think Jonathan Taylor looked very good his rookie year early in the season, but Hampton's workload was pretty much as good as you could hope for. He got all but 2 of the running back touches. Najee barely played at all. They had Hampton out there in every situation, short yardage, 4th down, 3rd downs, at the goal line. They had him in the whole game, every situation. There wasn't any time that he was clearly subbed off. So it seems like he's just the bell cow and Najee just gets mixed in. Maybe Najee gets mixed in more as he's healthier. I don't really know. And that'll probably depend on how good Hampton can be. But yeah, I don't really have any issues. The Chiefs have a really good run defense that's been known. They limited Barkley in the Super Bowl to a really inefficient game. They're kind of a pass funnel defense, as you could see from the Herbert stat line last night. So I'm really not worried about Hampton. I'm much more encouraged by the workload than I am discouraged by the performance. Obviously sucks if you started him, but I think you should be confident playing him again next week. I don't know who their opponent is, but I'm gonna play a guy getting 85% of the touches on the Chargers offense, pretty much no matter who it is. And we can go over to the Chiefs-Chargers game here in a second. Russell asks, what top rookies are you expecting to get off to a slow start this season versus rookies you expect to start hot? Will you look to take advantage of either of those? Yeah, so one thing I definitely plan to talk about in live streams or videos over the next couple of weeks is those types of players, where you want to get ahead on the market and you want to buy in or sell some of these players. And I think some of the candidates for that, I think my 2 biggest candidates for that would be Luther Burden and Byshel Tootin and Cam Scatabo. I think the 3 of them, Burden, Tootin, Scatabo, are all guys that I expect to get off to slow starts. Tootin because of the competition ahead of him, Scatabo because he missed a lot of time in training camp, letting Tracy kind of entrench himself as the starter. Burden because the team insists on pretending Olamide Zaccheaus is the better guy to have out there on the field. I think all these guys are going to work their way in. Kyle Williams as well could be one. Terrence Ferguson could be another one. Those are guys where I have some conviction in the player, and and would be looking to buy at a discount if they get a slow start. I thought Jalen Noel was going to be one of those guys. Now Christian Kirk is out, which really sucks for me in a couple spots, but that means Higgins and Noel are going to have a chance early on to be on the field and assert themselves as, viable options without Kirk in the lineup. I think somebody like Caleb Johnson could actually become a buy if he struggles as much early in the year as I expect him to. Like right now, he's still holding a lot of value. I'm not really inclined to buy him. I'm probably still lower than the market, but if he goes a few weeks where Warren is just the clear starter, I think he's probably worth looking into if he ends up falling into like a mid-second type of price range. Now, you can still get screwed, like people that bought Trey Benson partway through the season thinking he would get more work later. That didn't happen at all. So there's risk there. But I think it's still very likely that Caleb Johnson ends up having a decent role by the end of the year. And then the quarterbacks too. Like if we go 3 or 4 weeks and Jackson Dart doesn't play, it's not going to happen in every league, but there are people that are just so oriented on like what's happening right now, what's happening next week, that you can suddenly go in and get a player like that that's not scoring points at a discount. Him at a much lower price, like Jalen Milroe. So I think the first month of the season is going to be a great opportunity to go and get some shares of rookies that you missed on if those guys don't start out really, really strong. But I think some of the higher end rookies, I think Egbuka, McMillan, Hunter, Hampton, Genty, those guys are going to have the chance to start off really strong. Even like Tyler Warren, Matthew Golden, these guys are going to have all the chances they need from the start. And so it's kind of the opposite thing, which is like if they're getting all the opportunity, if they're on the field and they're not performing, that's when you want to maybe be concerned. So we'll be monitoring those guys really closely. Going to the Kansas City Chiefs. First order of business, Xavier Worthy injury. I don't know why the Chiefs love injuring their own players, but for whatever reason they do. Kelsey knocked Xavier Worthy's shoulder out, and we don't know how long he's going to miss. If you guys have seen anything like definitive where you do see something that is more clear with an update, please feel free to post it and tag me because I do want to know. My guess is he misses like 4 to 6 weeks, but again, it could be season ending. That's good news for Rashee Rice, I think. It's not like a huge deal for Rice, but it does help in the sense that Worthy's not going to get the opportunity to establish himself as the guy while Rice is out. Now it's like they could be getting back on the field around the same time, except that Rice is going to be totally healthy and Worthy's going to be working back from an injury. I think Rice is going to walk back into a massive, massive target share. So small win for Rashee Rice for sure. Travis Kelce, like in theory, he should be a really solid starter for the next several weeks. He also just seems insanely washed outside of that one touchdown play. Just really rough for Kelce. I just can't see myself ever trading like a second round pick for him. If you need a tight end and you can go and get him for a third and a bench player or a couple of third round picks, I think it's fine. But like this is almost certainly his final season. I think his production is going to be front loaded. Like if Rice and Worthy are both back for the fantasy playoffs, I don't have a lot of hope for what Kelsey's going to do. Yeah, I don't know. He just is really, really unexciting. I don't think there's a ceiling there. Hollywood Brown, insane amount of targets, mostly inefficient outside of that one crazy 4th and 7 play. I don't think Hollywood Brown is that good, but he is the best of a bad group of wide receivers right now. And that means he got peppered with targets. He's probably going to get not that type of a target share, but he's probably going to lead the team in targets until Worthy or Rice are back on the field. Again, a case where I don't really want to overpay for a guy that's a spot starter in the early parts of the season. Like, that player is just not likely to have that much of an impact on the outcome of games. But if you want to throw out a third because you need a guy that you can play, I think that's totally fine and reasonable to do. Mahomes is insane, and it's crazy that he could even get the game that close with the cast of weapons he was working with. Ended up having a pretty solid fantasy day due to all the scrambling. I don't know if we can necessarily bank on that happening every week. I'm a little bit worried about his production over the next several weeks with both of these wide receivers out. But maybe a buy low opportunity for him coming in the season if he does put up a few bad games. Again, like with the Cowboys, I think the big storyline for the Chiefs is the running backs. Isaiah Pacheco is pretty much dead, in my opinion. I think people might overlook how bad his role was. If you can sell Isaiah Pacheco for a second round pick still, I would do that like yesterday. I think it's really, really bad because what we saw in the game was Kareem Hunt played almost as many snaps as him, and Kareem Hunt played like all the third downs, and he played most of the short yardage stuff. And then you also had Brashard Smith, who was active for the first game of the year and actually mixed in for a few snaps like in the first quarter. So if they're already like putting him on the field, I don't think it'll take a whole lot to convince them to get him more involved. One or two big plays from him, and all of a sudden that role for Pacheco could be even smaller. He could be phased out. It's just not like they seem to like Kareem Hunt for some reason, even though he's terrible. Pacheco himself just isn't that good. And who knows, maybe he lost something with that broken leg last year that he hasn't gotten back. It's just a really, really gross situation for Pacheco, and I don't really want any part of it. So that's the biggest takeaway for me is he's a big time sell if you can still get anything reasonable for him. I would rather just have Javonte Williams at this point in Dynasty. That might be like, I don't know if that's, I don't think that's an overreaction. I think that's like a reasonable thing to say. Cause like, again, I think Pacheco is better than Javonte, but I don't think he's that good at all. And Javonte has like a Kyron Williams type of role right now. Pacheco doesn't. Maybe Javonte loses his role later, but I think it's more likely Javonte keeps the role he has than that Pacheco massively increases the role that we saw in week 1. So yeah, I think that I would just rather have Javonte at this point, and that is really depressing to say. We'll get to the Chargers in a second. I do see a couple questions here. Russell asks, do you think the Bills will have a wide receiver worth starting in a 12 by 10 Superflex league? Do they spread the ball around too much? I think Shakir, when he's Shakir is like coming off a high ankle sprain. I really wouldn't want to start him in week 1. But when we see some evidence that he's healthy and is playing, a full set of routes and everything like that, I think he's a fine flex play, maybe wide receiver 3. I don't think he has a high ceiling, but I think he's a totally fine guy to start in a PPR league. And then beyond that, it just kind of depends on whether one of these outside receivers can step up. If Keon Coleman is good, I think he can consolidate enough of that work to be startable. If Keon Coleman is like really, really terrible, I think Josh Palmer could become a flex play. If both of them are just fine, then they might cannibalize each other enough to be both irrelevant. This is where we'll start with the Chargers from Matthew. With Allen and Johnston playing a bigger role than likely expected, how do you think McConkey is impacted moving forward this season? I want to be buying into any and all concern or panic about Ladd McConkey. This is huge for me, okay? Here's what we know. Zoom out big picture. there was a lot of talk that these Chargers were going to be run heavy, that they took a running back in the first round and they brought in Najee and they were going to establish the run because that's what Greg Roman does. And I have been saying all offseason, that's not what they want to do. That's not what they did last year. They were run heavy to start the year because Justin Herbert had a foot injury. He got healthy at the bye. After the bye, they were actually one of the higher pass rate over expectation teams in the league. This is not a run heavy team. They backed that up in week 1. They were throwing on first down. They were throwing the ball a lot. Very pass heavy over expectation. And that makes sense because they have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL and they have good weapons. So this is a pass heavy team with an elite quarterback. Okay, that's important. Now, what happened in the game? Quentin Johnson and Ladd McConkey played basically full time, basically all the routes. Keenan Allen played on all the 3 wide receiver sets, and they played a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. He ended up running like 78% of the routes himself. So they played a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. All 3 of those guys were very involved. Now, Keenan Allen led the team in targets this week. He had a 29% target share. Ladd McConkey had a 27% target share. A 27% target share over the course of the season is still like a top 10 number. There aren't that many wide receivers that are going to sustain a 27% target share this year. And then Quentin Johnson was at about 21%. I think what we saw last night was not any reduction in a role for Ladd McConkey. It was just a little bit of week-to-week variance as far as Keenan Allen being the matchup that was exploited or being the guy that got the most targets. And we saw very few targets to running backs, very few targets to tight ends. Now, the tight ends on the Chargers suck. No disrespect to Will Dissly, but there's like no reason that Will Dissly ever actually needs to get a target. He's just sort of a default option. And last year they needed that default option. This year they don't. So I think we're going to see a much lower target share to tight ends. We're going to see a very high target share consolidated around these wide receivers, specifically Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey, I think. And we've never seen Greg Roman target the running back at a high rate, which is one of the limiting factors, I guess, for Hampton's ceiling. So all that to say, I don't think there was anything remotely concerning about this game for Ladd McConkey. He got 27% of the targets. He had a totally fine game. He scored like 13 PPR points, and he could have had a 20-something yard touchdown that Herbert narrowly overthrew him on, which would have put him at like 98 yards and a touchdown in the first game. So, no, I have zero concerns about Ladd. I thought he looked incredible. Matt Harmon also tweeted out that he looked incredible. The guy gets open on almost every single play. I think he's going to be totally awesome. I think he's going to be awesome. If anybody is even like 1% concerned about Ladd McConkey, I would go and buy him at a discount. I have no concerns. I am more bullish now on Ladd than I was before the game because now I have confirmation that the Chargers are going to go out and throw the ball like 60% of the time. And that's sick. That's great for the ceiling case for Ladd McConkey. So it's not to say that I think it's like a dumb question or a bad question. I think a lot of people are going to think that way, but I think it's a mistake to think that way. Now, what I will say, Keenan Allen looked way better than I expected, and that's good for him because that means he can take more targets away from tertiary options, specifically the tight ends, and be involved. Like, if you got Keenan Allen on the cheap, I think you should be happy. He's probably going to be a startable wide receiver 3 type for the whole year. And that's a great, I got him on waivers in 1 league or 2 leagues. That's a big win. Quentin Johnson, Certainly, Quentin Johnson performed better in this game and looks to be a bigger piece of this offense than I really would have ever anticipated. I just didn't think he was any good, and he clearly does have something to bring to the table. He did have the lowest target share of the 3. He just happened to score twice. I think he's going to be kind of a risky flex play for the season. I'm still going to cash out. If someone's going to give me a second, I'll sell him personally. That's just, I don't have a lot of conviction in him. I don't know if people are going to immediately go ahead and send that out, but people are pretty reactionary on week 1 once we actually have football. So if you have Quentin Johnson hanging around on your team, it's not crazy to go and send out that type of an offer. What's up, Frillster? Welcome in. You said, have you talked about how the Chargers pass rate affects Hampton? Should we be worried at all? I don't think we should be worried. Number one, because he's getting such a high percentage of the touches. Number two, because he is a good pass catcher. And in theory, an uptick in pass rate should ultimately lead to more targets for the running backs. Like if there's, a 9% target share, or it'll be higher than that. There's like an 11% target share to go around for the running backs on the team. If they throw the ball 50 more times, there's going to be more targets for running backs. And those targets could level things out as far as carries that are lost. Also, going pass heavy means they'll probably get down to the goal line more often, and that could mean more touchdown opportunities. So I think it's all kind of a wash for Hampton. I think it's just a good thing for the team to be good. I think he could get more involved as a pass catcher as things go along. And again, I think if he's going to be getting 80% of the work, it's just not going to matter because there's still going to be enough run game work with that type of a percentage for him to score plenty of points. So I'm not worried. I won't be moving Hampton at all in the rankings. At least I don't anticipate moving him at all after week 1. That's where I'm sitting with it. As far as the depth options on this team, it's really hard to be excited about Trey Harris. He caught one pass in this game, but it seemed like he was pretty clearly behind Keandre Lambert-Smith. Like I remember seeing KLS in the game multiple times before I saw Trey Harris in the game. At the very least, they're even right now. And that's not great because you were already talking about the wide receiver 4 on this team. It's clear to me QJ's not going anywhere. Keenan's not going anywhere. Unless there's an injury, I don't think there's anything for either of these guys to really carve out. And that sucks, for what was invested in him. I think there was a path for Harris, before they signed Keenan, before we knew how much the team liked Quentin Johnston, for him to carve out the second pass catcher role in this team. That's not going to happen anymore. So I'm going to move him down even more than I have. He's going to be way down in near the bottom of the late 2 tier. I don't really think we should view him much differently than like a Jack Besh or Jalen Knoll at this point. Except that I guess, at least in the case of Besh, that the offense he's in could be more fantasy friendly if he does get on the field. But also his competition is a little steeper than Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton. So I don't know. It's tough for Trey Harris. Keandre Lambert-Smith, you didn't really invest anything in him. They're both obviously worth rostering. The last piece here is Justin Herbert. I think we've all been tempted at times this offseason to question whether it was worth having him ranked where he was ranked. I held firm on Herbert in the 2 base ones tier. I kept him ahead of Ladd, right next to Drake London. I kept him ahead of Hampton, McMillan, and Hunter. I've kept him ahead of Stroud and guys like JSN and Marvin Harrison. And you see him fall in startups. People don't want to click him. It's not exciting. He's had a couple of years in a row that weren't like super fantasy relevant or not high end QB1 stuff. But this is why we value these quarterbacks so highly that we know are really talented, because these things shift. These things can shift when situations shift. But we know that we always knew the talent ceiling was there. And certainly we can't count on 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every week. But if this is going to be a pass-heavy team with this cast of weapons, I think Herbert is absolutely good enough to come through with like a top 5 season. Like he could do that. At the very least, I think if you were doing rest of season quarterback rankings right now, he should be no later than like QB 9, QB 8 or QB 9 at the worst. So that's something we should be really excited about if you have Justin Herbert. And it's just a good reminder. It's really easy to just say all the quarterbacks are the same in the offseason, but when they get on the field, you want guys that are capable of doing this. Even if they don't always do it every year, it's not guaranteed, but the guys that have the talent ceiling to do this while also having a very high insulated floor of value. And that's what we've had. That's what we've always had with Justin Herbert. So I actually sold some shares this offseason. I don't necessarily know that I individually regret any of those deals, but I do wish that I had a little bit more of him right now. But I do have a ton of Ladd McConkey, so I will be, and Keenan Allen actually. So I will be living vicariously through those guys and hoping that he funnels a lot of that passing game production to those 2 players. that's all I have on the first 2 games of the season. You guys let me know what other questions you have left about week 1. Dynasty questions, trade questions, whatever. We'll wrap this thing up in like the next 10 minutes or so. Kevin, I talked about how AJ Brown sucks a while back. We talked about Thursday Night Football first, so you can certainly go back and hear that. I just don't think he's healthy right now. I don't know when he's going to be healthy. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that's going to linger because he tries to play through it every week and then he aggravates it and then he misses a month. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I certainly hope he's fine, but I don't know. Austin wants my offensive player of the year, MVP, and offensive rookie of the year. Okay. I think MVP. I think MVP is very likely to be one of the big 3 quarterbacks. I just think those guys always have the best chance at being the MVP. It feels like it's been a while since Mahomes won it. If he can come through with some more games like he had yesterday with these weapons, I think he has a good chance at it. But I think we should just assume Lamar Jackson is the MVP until we see someone else otherwise. I think as far as like dark horse candidates, I think Justin Herbert's actually not a terrible bet if you were going to go like bet on a long shot. Like, they could win that division. They could do it throwing the ball a lot. He could go for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. Like, I think it's totally possible. You know, if they sweep the Chiefs this year and then they win the division, I think like the narrative vibe there could be good for his case. Hard for me to think of a lot of other, like, I don't really think any non-quarterbacks are like serious candidates. I never really think they're serious candidates. Offensive player of the year, that could be a non-quarterback for sure. I think Nico Collins, I think is a decent I think Nico, Puka Nacua, Jahmyr Gibbs. Those would probably be some of my favorite, like, not top of the list candidates to win. No, Austin, I'm fully aware that Lamar didn't win last year, but he should have won last year. Lamar Jackson was the MVP last year. He just didn't get the award. He was very clearly the best player in football last year. All right. Frailster, I think this is maybe a little bit over the top. Dark horse, Drake May, dark horse MVP. I'm going to go with no on that one. But certainly he could be a dark horse fantasy MVP. I think that's possible. I think offensive rookie of the year, like Ashton Genty's just like, or Cam Ward, I think are the most likely candidates just because Genty's going to get so many touches. Ward is a quarterback and it's very much, you know, a quarterback award. If there's a quarterback that plays well at all as a rookie, it's probably going to be them. But I think McMillan has a chance. I think Hunter's got a chance. I think Henderson's got a chance. I think Igbuka's got a chance. Like there are a lot of rookies that are in a position to put up big seasons. So that's a tough one to call. Matthew Antill asks, do you think Golden is startable over Juwan or Henderson? I mean, I would start both of those guys over Golden, but I can't say for sure. Like, I think all of them are reasonable options. I think Henderson's probably got a higher floor than Golden in the sense that, like, I think I feel pretty confident that Henderson's going to touch the ball like 8 to 10 times. I have no idea if Golden's going to catch 2 passes or 6 passes or what. If it was my team personally, I would play Henderson over Golden, but I'm not a big like start sit guy. And I would guess that Henderson's projection is higher, but I don't really know. This is an awesome trade from the Pokemon guy, Hill and Charbonnet for Igbuka. That's crazy stuff. I don't know why someone would be doing that, but good for you, man, and enjoy it. That's awesome. Freelster asks, best way to capitalize on week one overreactions. Are you selling guys that have big games, buying players to get off to a slow start? Yeah, this is going to be kind of the focus for all of next week, is like sorting through every single thing that happens and trying to figure out what's actionable and what's not. And it's not a perfect science. Like, I definitely got some stuff wrong last year, but I got some stuff right as well. And that's, that's the name of the game. I'm not going to I'm not going to sell every guy that has big games. I'm not going to buy every player that gets off to a slow start. But when we get a player like, like Quentin Johnston, he should be a riser in rankings based on what he did week one. Over a 20% target share, ran a ton of the routes. But I think when there are players that I'm not that convinced on the talent level, I'm more likely to sell off of a big game if I think people are going to overreact to it. If I think, if I can get a second for Quentin Johnston, I'd rather just sell. If I can get a second for Javonte Williams, I'd rather just sell. And then I can reallocate that value later into other players. But it is really hard to say for sure in like a macro sense which guys I'd be selling and which guys I'd be buying. I think we're going to have to just wait and see what happens in the games and then go kind of case by case. And my goal, and I'm going to try really hard to make this happen, is to go live Monday afternoon. I'm going to just try to cram in a bunch of notes, go to teach, get home from teaching, add to the notes, go live, and just talk about what happened in week one. So we can just go over it really quickly. And then I'll kind of organize my thoughts a little better and have some go deeper on some situations for the video, which will come out like Wednesday or Thursday. So we'll be talking about some buys and sells for sure on Monday afternoon. Biff867 says, I'm weirdly concerned about BTJ at the price he's been going. Any way to assuage my doubts? Yeah, he's sick at football. BTJ is insanely good, and Liam Cohn is insanely good at scheming touches and fantasy points to players that are extremely good. Ryan Heath, who's one of the sharpest analysts that I know, his bold prediction on the Dynasty Points podcast last week was that Brian Thomas wins the Triple Crown and leads the NFL in receptions and receiving yards and touchdowns. And then Jacob Gibbs, who's another one of the sharpest analysts in the industry, also thinks Brian Thomas could be the best wide receiver in fantasy this year. And yeah, I think he's just really, really, really good. And I don't know why I don't really know what the reason for concern would be on Brian Thomas, to be honest with you. He's young, he's elite, he's an every down player, he has a good offensive coordinator, he has a solid quarterback, potentially great quarterback, we'll see. It's a perfect storm. Nico asks, how many weeks will it take for you to sell a bet you were high on that just doesn't meet expectations? Like, for example, if Henderson is getting enough volume but just doesn't look good. Well, let's try to be realistic with our hypotheticals here, because if Henderson's getting volume, he's going to look good. I don't even believe this is in the range of outcomes. Again, this is a tough question to answer because I think it's so case by case. It's like, how are we failing, right? Like, where is the reason that we're failing? Is it situational? Is it like, okay, they're struggling with the opportunity they're getting, but like, what's the offensive environment around them? Like, how are they grading? What's their PFF grading? Or like, are they open? There's just so many tricky variables there. With Henderson, if somehow Henderson was getting a bunch of touches and he just wasn't being efficient with them, I don't know. I just think I'd probably want to buy into him in the sense that I had a lot of conviction in his talent. He looked great in the preseason. I'd probably just chalk it up to the Patriots offense being bad and just say like he's going to be better later. I'm trying to think of an example from last year, like where I had to kind of move on from a bet. Let me just think for a second here. Well, I'll move on from last year, but like Breece Hall is an example of a player this year that like I had believed in Breece Hall. I was really high on Breece Hall, And then we got this bad information from the preseason about how he's going to be deployed. That's not a player I'm going to hold on to a lot of priors on in season. Like if we get into the season and it's like 2, 3, 4 weeks where he's clearly in a split, he's not getting enough work to produce, I'm not going to like hold on to the idea that he's going to, steal away the job from these other running backs. I will adjust on him pretty quickly and move him down. So I think it's just like, you got to read into what the coaches are doing. Is it in line with, or is it counter to what they've said they're going to do? And then you got to try to isolate the performances individually. Biff says the reason is Hunter's involvement. I guess that was enough to make me feel better though. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Jamar Chase has T Higgins. Like Justin Jefferson has Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. Like good offenses with good quarterbacks can have two viable weapons in them. And alphas eat first. Like the odds that Travis Hunter are better than Brian Thomas are just not that high. In my opinion, they're certainly well below 50%. And if he's the best player in the offense, he's dictating his touches. There are 100% of targets to go around in an offense. The best players in the NFL are going to get to like 30 or 31%. So that still leaves 70%, give or take, to be distributed to other players on the team. So even if Travis Hunter was good enough to get his own 30%, that would still leave another 40% on the table. So I'm just never going to care about an elite player having another good player on their team. It just doesn't mathematically, like it just doesn't matter. And Brian Thomas, the way that he scores points as like a chunk play guy, probably isn't going to ever need, if he's in a pass heavy offense, more than like a 26 or 27% target share to deliver really, really high end fantasy production. Like you look at Jamar Chase last year, he didn't have a 30% target share, really anywhere close to it. But the passing volume was so high in Cincinnati and he was making so many big plays that it just didn't matter. So yeah, I have no concerns at all about Travis Hunter's involvement on the field. Yeah, Nico, I totally get what you're saying here with the question. Golden, like Matthew Golden's probably going to run most of the routes from week 1. And based on my priors on him, if he is giving us like a 15% targets per out run across his first 3 or 4 games, I'm going to be pretty fine to point to that and say like, oh, look, he's exactly the same player that he was in college. He's not commanding that many targets. And that'll kind of be that for me. Whether that's the right move or not, I don't know. But certainly my prior evaluations are going to inform what I think about these early season performances. Bro, this is something that you should tell me, like, not when we're 59 minutes into the live stream. If I've been making weird noises and you've been hearing weird stuff from my teeth this whole time, please let me know sooner next time. Please let me know if this is a better distance for the microphone. What's up, Drew? Welcome to the stream. Travis Hunter news means something to all of us, man. We're all excited about Travis Hunter. Can't wait to watch his debut tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. I think it's totally fine to trade Brian Thomas for Puka. In fact, I have Puka ranked 2 spots ahead of Brian Thomas, so I have no issue with that. But I love both guys. All right. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to wrap this one up for tonight. You can always hit me, in the chat if you have other questions that I didn't get to. But we're coming up on an hour here. I got a little more school stuff I'd like to wrap up so I don't have to do it tomorrow. So hope you guys have a great night. Don't forget to set your lineups for week 1 if you haven't done that already. And let's enjoy some really good football tomorrow. All right. Oh, sorry, Drew. I'll hit this question. Does the Travis news drop him lower? Brian Thomas? No, not at all. Except, in fact, go back like 5 minutes or so in this live stream, and I just did a whole rant about why Travis Hunter doesn't affect Brian Thomas. So if you want to hear that, just go ahead and scroll back about 5 minutes in the stream. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great night. Hope you win all your matchups. I'll talk to you very soon.